podcast,
The Alchemy of Transforming Trauma.
Welcome to today's episode. I'm really excited about today because we have a wonderful guest joining us for our conversation today, Elizabeth Goddard, who is a multiple selling author of 2 books, Finding Lily and the A to Z of Emotional Abuse, about to publish another book, which she can tell us all about in a minute. But before we do that, let's just kick off by saying hello. Welcome, Elizabeth. How are you today?
I'm really good. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. Thanks for joining us. And as we always do when we start off our episodes today, we usually just have a little check-in and find out how everyone is. So firstly, Jude, hello, how are you? We've not even said hello to you yet.
Hello. Yeah, no, I'm really well. It's I always start by looking out the window. It was absolutely glorious this morning, beautiful frost, singing birds, and now, of course, it's raining because I live in Ireland. So it's raining again. But the thing about when it rains in Ireland is you could just go, oh, it's raining now, but in 5 minutes, it's probably going to be sunny again, or it might be snowing. Who knows? This time of year, you just can't tell. So yeah, I'm good. I am, as you know, in a play. We're doing rehearsals, which is both challenging and fun. When we get close to going up on a play, I get really super anal. I want everything to be how I want it. I want every prop to be exactly it's basically how I show nerves, is getting anal about stuff. So that's beginning to happen because we've only got a few weeks to go, and I'm like, oh, that shouldn't be there. This should be there. You've got to shut the door behind you. So I'm just really sitting with that in rehearsal. But I'm also having a really good laugh because you get to cock about on stage, which I love. Yeah, so that's where I'm at.
Oh,
how about you?
Well, I haven't cocked about on stage for a long time. I left my job. Well, I don't know if have I mentioned this on here before. I left my wonderful job in the West End about 2 months ago now, but I'm thoroughly enjoying myself. I am actually going off doing some filming next week on a long-running BBC soap opera, daytime soap. That's next week. But also, yeah, it was my daughter's 18th birthday a couple of days ago. She's actually a leap year baby, so it wasn't her official birthday, but yeah, it was her birthday. So I don't have any children anymore. They're all grown up, and she's going to probably fly the nest in the summer. So it's kind of interesting. Lots of stuff coming up about that, really. But in general, I'm just getting on with it. I feel quite numb at the moment. In general, there's just so much going on in the world. I'm sort of just a bit over it. I know I should care a bit more, but right now I just don't feel like I've got it in me. I'm just enjoying kind of focusing on what I can do, which is, doing the podcast, trying to do the YouTube series, and finish off the film that I'm making at the moment. But yeah, just being at home a lot and being quite quiet and reflective. And
outrageously creative during that quiet and reflective time, I might say.
Well, trying to be anyway. Yeah, just trying to keep positive, really, because there's a lot to be despondent about right now, and it's just feels like it's never ending. But got to just focus on what we can do and try, like we would with any situation, really, is focus on what we can do from the inside and put our attention there rather than trying to change things on the outside, which we have literally no control over. So yeah. And
how about you, Liz? How are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm in the middle of launching a course, so I've tried to clear everything as much as I can so I can concentrate on that. So apart from that, I'm just keeping my head down, really. Trying to keep quiet and keep my energy levels, at a decent level. So positive vibes, but energy, can be depleted so quickly. So yeah, that's my main focus.
Great. And how do you do that? What are your go-tos for kind of keeping your energy in a good place?
My go-tos, oh gosh, my go-tos are breathing. I talk about this like constantly. Breathing and counting, and it's like a box breathing. And I grounding and treating myself like a toddler. So I might take myself off to bed, or I might, give myself a snack, or, that generally, I think that's the way that we should be looking after ourselves, is just seeing yourself as a toddler and seeing what the needs are, rather than saying, you shouldn't be, doing whatever it is that you should be doing. You should be focusing, but obviously there's something stopping me focus or whatever. So go and distract myself and then get back on task. So
oh, I love that.
Yeah, me too. That sounds really sweet. That's like self-care expressed in a way that I actually want to do. Like, treat yourself like a toddler. Let's have a nice time. I might jump up and down for a bit in a minute.
Well, I mean, there's that. You could have a bath, or
Yeah.
you know, I had this one of my friends had this big poster. Do you know Sark? Have you heard of Sark? She does like illustrations and like sort of poetry type things, and a friend of mine had this really long poster, and one of them was like, you know, how to deal with a cranky child, and it was like, get pots and pans and bash them, and you know, feed them make a chocolate cake and eat it with your hands and things like that, you know. So I loved it so much. Yeah, why not do it? Why do we have to just treat children like that? We are children, aren't we? You know,
aren't we?
Somebody's child. So.
Absolutely are.
I love that. That's really, yeah, because we often have a little laugh about how the phrase self-care I used to say self-care makes me actually want to self-harm. Like, I know that's a kind of a ridiculous thing to say, but like the phrase itself used to make me sort of viscerally reject it for some reason. It's just so alien to me to kind of look after myself and realize actually a lot of my life I've actually been harming myself, in some cases quite obviously, like with addictions, especially with alcohol, I mean, but also food. And so that whole concept of self-care was just quite alien to me until I started to kind of go on this healing journey and start to try and actively look after myself.
Yeah. I mean, there was everything in moderation, isn't it? So, but yeah, I mean, I just, why not? Why not treat? That's, to me, in fact, I was listening to some really interesting information over the weekend. And one of the things was that if you've been in an emotionally abusive relationship, the abuser manipulates you back to an infantile state. So they take you back to that child state. And I've been talking for the last however many years, I've been talking about this, about treating yourself like a toddler. And so it sort of made sense why I sort of say it. I don't know why, I don't know where it came from, but I've always just said, treat yourself like a toddler. You know, if you need a nap, take a nap, you know.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Yeah,
That's
I love
interesting. We'll get deeper into this. It reflects, I'm in a 12-step called Adult Children of Alcoholics and Dysfunctional Families. And the main tool of healing in that is reparenting. So learning to reparent yourself as though you were the child that you used to be, and give yourself the good parenting that you may or may not receive.
Oh, excellent. Well, I mean, we're really, you know, delighted to have you on with us today, because you are a real expert on dealing, and not just dealing, but actually totally healing from narcissistic in general, or emotionally abusive relationships. You have a YouTube channel which is called The Emotional Abuse Sanctuary, and you have a website as well, thedivorcesanctuary.com, where, you know, you are really supporting people who are not just physically divorcing, but also emotionally divorcing from emotionally abusive situations. And so I'm just really intrigued, like, what's brought you to this place in your life? And
well, I wish I could say that it was, you know, it's just like something, it's just an inspiration brought me to this point. But sadly, I can't. Life events brought me to this point. And I got to going through the divorce process, and I found it very triggering. I mean, extremely triggering. And I thought I was prepared enough. I'd done enough inner work, and I'd done a few courses, and, you know, on healing from narcissistic abuse recovery and that type of thing. I did a NARP program, but it didn't go deep enough. So, and I'd already had the tools. The weirdest thing is I already had the tools, but when you're in that place, you can't do it yourself. So, I knew how how triggering it was and how painful it was. And then I was training, because I'm a Reiki master, and I was training all these people, and they were all coming to me, had the same thing. They were either in it, or they'd been in they had a narcissistic mother, or, you know, they had a partner that was doing it. And I just like, oh, this is really weird. Why every time I teach someone there's this common thread, and that's how it sort of led me down that path. I realized how important it is to not just divorce physically. You actually really need to be emotionally divorced from them to actually go through that process, because they're going to throw everything at you, and they got all that information because they collected it during the relationship.
I'm totally inspired by something you just said. You said, I've got all these tools and I've done all these courses. When you're in that place, you can't do it yourself.
No,
that's just, yes, that really resonated with me, because you know, when you're in that place, you need support as well. You need somebody to reflect positively where another person may have been reflected negatively, and somebody to say, you're okay, we've got this together.
Yeah, it's
not alone in
holding
this
space, isn't it? Having you know, somebody to hold space and then guide you through it, because you think, oh, you know, I can do this, or I track down wounds. I'm a bit, I don't know what the equivalent would be, but I love tracking down where it originates from, where this comes from. But I couldn't do that for myself. I tried a few times, but I couldn't do it for myself until I was like really out of it. And then I've got a really good friend of mine, and so I just said to her, I need to use you. So I used to, you know, it started, when did it, I started around about 2017, I think it was, in the summer. And no, I can't, maybe it was 2018, and we just went into some really deep work, but I was as much as I could be out of it at that point, but I just needed someone to really help me go in deep. So
I mean, sorry, I'm jumping in again, but the idea of treating yourself like a toddler that you talked about earlier, you wouldn't send a toddler anymore up a chimney or down a deep dark hole without, you know, you'd take them into a scary place together and you'd walk alongside them.
Yeah, you might explain
that there's nothing to be afraid of.
Yeah, you might explain what's going on. You might say, look, we're going to go through this door, and then we're going to go and do such and such, and then when we get in there, this is my, you know, you might meet certain, you know, whatever it is, you know, if it's a big scary process, you know, you're not going to just go, oh, just if you jump in this taxi, I'm going to send you to the airport, and somebody will just show you where to go. You would never do that to a child, would you?
No.
No, definitely not. I mean, what's interesting is that you mentioned that when you were doing your Reiki training, you had people that were resonating with the kind of the fact that they'd experienced narcissistic abuse. And when I met you, we were doing a different sort of training, which was a sovereignty training, and that was what completely drew me to you in that instance, was that we connected over this emotional narcissistic abuse situation.
Within about, what was it? It was within about 6 minutes, I think.
Yeah, and I just found it so inspiring, and I'm kind of intrigued, actually. I mean, it's kind of a little bit off topic, but you know, what kind of drew you to the sort of like the sovereignty stuff? Because I see it very much related to the whole thing of abuse, because it's all about reclaiming your sovereignty and your personal empowerment in situations.
I mean, that again is I just love the woo. I love the universal, you know, stuff that puts people in place. Or where are we now? We're 2020, at the end of 2020, every year I usually pick a word for the year. And I picked, it was about October, I think it was. I did it a bit early. I think I was just really fed up, and I wanted the year to be over with, like most people. And I picked the word sovereignty. And then I just got led down this path, and I ended up on, you know, with lots of groups of people that I was meeting with. I had the same thing, but I just thought, was to me, what's going on, I can because I see the layers of in the abuse, and the manipulation that happens, and the games that are played, and the cycles of, you know, the push-pull of emotions, like, look how good I am, I'm giving you this, let me take it away from you, and then I'm going to give you a bit of it back, and you're going to go, oh, you're so amazing, thank you so much, and you haven't realized how much power you've given away. So I think that's, yeah, that was for me what it was. The whole thing about sovereignty is, it's just like going, oh, this doesn't feel right. That was my biggest thing. This doesn't feel right. There's something more going on, and sort of tuning in, and you know, we're waiting to see, and actually being proven right a lot of the time, which I don't want to be. I want people to challenge me, which they have done, and I want them to challenge me and say, I'm more than happy to put my hands up and say, I'm really wrong about this. I really want you to prove me wrong. But so far, it hasn't happened. But that's how, yeah, the sovereignty stuff is, to me, is about recognizing this abuse that happens on every single level.
Yeah. I mean,
understanding the biggest thing for me is, which I would love everyone to realize, is that nobody gives a shit about you. Nobody gives a shit about you. They really don't. They really don't.
No, it's very naive of us to think that that they do, and we're sort of involved in this. For me, it feels like we're involved. I mean, I'm just speaking for myself personally here. I've made a couple of YouTube videos, and we did a podcast episode about this as well. It was about, you know, what I consider to be narcissistic abuse from the kind of whole system that we live in, and that for me is something which is very apparent and becoming more and more. It's like a big game that's being played. Like, I feel like I'm watching a film half the time, and I've got some weird role in it that I didn't sign up for, and that I'm definitely not getting paid for.
Well, you never know when the payback's coming from. You know, if you look at the law of abundance, it can be in any form. I know. So it doesn't have to be money. But it would be really nice if it was at the moment.
Well, I mean, I suppose for me, what's really interesting is, like, I actually view it in the same way that I view a narcissistic entanglement with a person, is that actually it's all just bringing me back to my own self, and showing me where my vulnerabilities and where my weaknesses are, and where I'm depending on something outside of me to fix and save and heal me, and take me and guide me where I need to go. Actually, I have to become my own savior in every single situation, whether it's in an intimate relationship or with the whole bloody system. I have to become my own savior, and that's it. It's really,
I mean, that to me is what sovereignty is. It's about just being who you are, you know. You said something, and it reminded me of something I've written recently, and I can't think what it is, but it's about being one, and it's about claiming back all the parts that people want from you, you know, and whether that's in the larger scheme of things or on a personal level. And it's about being true to who you are. And, you know, we're born into these family units, and we have no choice. Well, it depends on, how high you want to go up that with that, how, you know, how deep you want to go with that question, but or statement. But you have no choice as to the unit you come in, and to me it's about learning. But you end up in this unit, and these people tell you that, you know, in our tribe, you know, we don't do that. In our tribe, we work, or in our tribe, we would never do this to people. Our tribe are doctors, or our tribe are accountants, or our tribe, you know. So all these limitations are fed to the child at a really, really young age. So it's, what if you're really creative and you end up as an accountant? I mean, unless you're a creative accountant, I couldn't think of anything more worse, you know, as a child to be smothered. And I always remember I used to do, I had another company when my kids were a bit younger, and I worked at a steam railway. I used to do face painting and children's parties. And one of the women there went and volunteered, and she was telling me the story of her husband who ended up in banking. And as a child, all he wanted to do was be a train driver. And he ended up to impress his mum, and and he ended up, and I met a doctor actually, and he did the same thing. He went into, because he wanted his mum to be proud of him. And it's like, wow, you've given up the whole of your soul.
Yeah, but that's a really good point. And it's not that there's anything malevolent about the messages that are given as a child. It's about, you know, in the things that you've mentioned, it's about making sure that they're okay in the world and making sure that they do what is valuable. And it's just communication of values.
Yeah.
But there is this, I mean, in me and in many people, a tendency to want to fulfill that, even when it's way outdated, and those people might not even be alive anymore, still trying to please somebody that was impossible to please in the first place, and is not even there anymore, and I'm still trying to do it. And you said earlier, nobody gives a shit about you. And I just felt honestly, I felt this liberation. I felt myself get about a foot taller. It's like, oh my God, if nobody really gives a shit what I'm doing, I mean, systemically as well. I live in Ireland, it's hilarious. Whenever you see a sign that says don't do something, there'll be 30 people doing that very thing. I love that about this country. It's like, we'll go and do it here because there's a sign. But I feel like, God, if nobody gives a shit about what I'm doing, including the dead people who didn't really give a shit at the time, they were just acting out their own unresolved childhood trauma.
And all they're doing is repeating what they were told.
Yeah.
And they were told it because somebody else told them that.
And so all we're doing there, we've got this row of little toddlers that have been sent off down dark holes without support, acting all this out. But fundamentally, if nobody gives a shit, I get to now do whatever I like, which includes dancing around the streets and going for a swim and I mean, acting like an idiot.
It could be taken in the way. So, you know, when I talk about it in a narcissistic relationship or an emotionally abusive, I don't like the word narcissist, and it's not the fact that I don't like it. I think it's like it's a good way of people understanding what personality type, you know, the manipulative person, but you're never going to get somebody who is who you believe could be that to take responsibility. So they're not going to get a diagnosis, so you're claiming something that you don't officially know, but I will use it to, you know, for this. But so the narcissistic personality is doing everything they want for their own means. So they are giving you, whether it's attention or goods or whatever it is, they're doing it because they want something in return. And what they actually want in return is far more than is far more than they're giving you. Does that make sense? And I think that goes right the way through. It's right the way through society. So whether it's a company or whether it's a government or a country or something, you know, they say they're doing this to protect you. I'm doing this to protect you. I'm keeping you away from your family and friends because I'm protecting you. They're really abusive and they don't want you. Really what they're doing is they're protecting themselves, because they know if you go and speak to somebody and tell them what's going on in that relationship, they'll turn around and say, oh my God, that sounds awful. That sounds really abusive. Are you sure? You know, and they so that's really what they're doing, is they're ring fencing you, so that you don't go off and find the information.
So it's a little bit like coercive control, isn't it? The things that are happening. And I thought it was very interesting then you just mentioned about labeling, because one of the things I wanted to ask you about was because I saw one of your videos on your YouTube channel where you were talking about labeling. Well, you're talking about, actually, it was about psychopaths yawning. You did a really interesting little an interesting video about
every so often Contagious. I think, oh my God, I haven't really got much time. Is there something out there that I can just like do without having to write it myself? And I came across that, but actually they take me just as long. So
but what I found interesting in it was you were talking about, at the beginning of it, you were talking about labeling. Is that, you know, labeling people, psychopaths?
No, sorry. I'm going to interrupt this broadcast to say, what the fuck are we talking about? Psychopaths yawning? That needs more explanation.
Okay.
I'm in the dark.
So there
was
a video that Elizabeth put on her YouTube channel, which was about because psychopaths lack empathy, There was a study that was done, I'm sure Elizabeth can expand on this in a minute. There was a study that was done that showed that people that are psychopaths, labeled psychopaths, are less likely to be, if someone's yawning around them, they're less likely to yawn. But we all know that yawning is contagious.
It's
and
contagious.
So it can be a sign of that. It could be a sign.
Oh, it could be.
It's not a diagnostic.
It's not a diagnostic tool to say, oh, you're a psychopath. I think that the unknown thing, or not the little known thing, you know, about everyone hears the word psychopath and they think, oh my God, they're a murderer. They're not. It's like a really small percentage that you know, would commit that. And the big question is, are they made, or are they created, or are they born like it? You know, I think the main consensus is that there is some form of brain damaged, you know, something that's happened. But yeah, this is that if I was to yawn now, the likelihood is that you would actually yawn as well. It's a primeval, I can't think what it is now, but it is a primeval, you know, ingrained, inbuilt reaction. And I can't remember, I know it's a release, a big release as well, you know, from a spiritual point of view of trauma and stuff. But yeah, if you yawn, somebody more than likely is going to yawn around you. Oh God, please don't do that, because I'm gonna, oh look, I'm off again, you know, and off everyone around the table is yawning. So
thank you for explaining that.
Now for me, the bit that I was kind of, I mean, that's really interesting, obviously, but the bit for me that I was kind of more interested in was about the aspects of labeling people. Because this is something that gets leveled at me quite a lot. People say to me like, oh, you're always talking about narcissism, and I think personally think it's important to talk about it, because if you don't have an umbrella under which to collect the different behavior types that sort of indicate to you that you are dealing with a certain type of personality. Like sometimes I've heard you mention on and see on your website and things like this about that you didn't know that you were playing a game and that you didn't have the rules to it.
Well, and every time I thought I got the rules, they were changed. So so you're not operating on what we would consider to be normal terms of engagement with somebody. And it is important to recognize that this is a thing that can happen, and to recognize what that is. And you do have to, unfortunately, put a label on it so that you can describe it. And from that point of view, I completely agree. But you're never going to get one of them into, I'm not saying never, okay, it's very unlikely, because they don't see this as your fault. They've maneuvered and manipulated this relationship, and then they've, at the very end, they place you in the point that they're the victim, you're the abuser, you're the one that's hurt them. So you're never gonna get that diagnosis. I also think from a point of view, like you hear it a lot on TV programs. I mean, Dirty John was an amazing, I don't know whether you've seen that on Netflix. That was just an amazing series, and literally I've watched it, I don't know how many times I've watched that. It was just, there's so many elements that I can just, it was, you know, it was my relationships. So, but the reason I say it is that it's easy to label someone, oh, they're a narcissist. Well, are they? So I go back to Byron Katie. Is that true? Well, it isn't true, because they haven't had a diagnosis. Okay, they might have narcissistic traits, and we've all on this spectrum. We all are on this spectrum. Ours, we might be here at 0, or, you know, 3 or 4, or maybe even up to 10. They're way over 70 and above. They're on this side. But they're manipulative, and it is, I do agree there are points that you want, but a lot of people will say, you know, you might hear people, I think I used to talk about a lot, I don't know, I've mentioned it recently, but people have affairs and hurt people. That doesn't make someone a narcissist, you know. And so for a wounded person to come out of that relationship and say, oh, you know, this happened to me, and therefore my husband's a narcissist, he lied to me, therefore whatever. So, you know, I think we've got to be really, really careful. That's the reason I say it. I think it's really helpful in the beginning when you're trying to formulate what happens. you're trying to understand. There were so many questions, and you end up with even more questions. I was listening to something, and I can't remember if it was about gaslighting, and it was years ago, and they were saying, I think it was Richard Grannon actually, and he was saying, if you come out of this relationship and your pain is completely disproportionate to what happened, then it's more than likely that you've been trauma bonded, so I've run a group, and I've got about 2,000 plus women in there, and initially when they come in, they're narcissists, and and you think, well, is that actually true? Is that true? They might have narcissistic traits, but and it's also you've got to be careful particularly if you're putting stuff in for court and stuff like that, where it might be useful for your legal team to have an understanding of how manipulative they've been. And some people, I'm not joking, they have been in that they were married to the devil, but it's getting that balance between being understanding at what level that this was happening.
I mean, that's really interesting that you should say that they were married to the devil, because this whole thing about labeling is really interesting to me, because one of the things I feel strongly about is, yes, it's useful to have a category, to kind of say, okay, I'm recognizing some similarities, and then to let go of it. Because my problem with labeling is that when it others the person and makes them into the villain, we're losing track of does my belly feel all right in the inside when I'm around this person? Do I end up feeling confused? I know that I'm coming at this from a place of somebody who's thought about narcissism a lot and knows that these are responses to somebody who might not have, like you said, your best interests at heart, who might not give a shit about your well-being. And we want to believe that person gives a shit about our well-being. But for me, it's kind of devil's advocate, not the devil that person was with, but a different devil. It's like, does my toddler feel okay around this person? Does the little part of me inside feel safe when I'm around this person? And fundamentally, bless that person off into their life, but I don't want to be around them because part of me doesn't feel safe. Whatever they are, they could be a Jabberwocky, they could be a stone statue, whatever I want to call them. This is the coming back into the inside. Absolutely. And I think, like we said, it can be useful, but I think it can be useful for a short period of time. And if we lean on it too much and other them too much, we're losing the point.
I say that in my book. It's really useful to get when you're, you don't know what's happened when you come out of this type of relationship. It's shocking, and you're like, what, and also part of you've been trained that if you've gone around this cycle a few times, so you've got idealization, devaluation, and discard, if you've gone around that cycle a few times, part of you is wondering if they're coming back, and then you might stumble across things like hoovering and thinking, oh, well, I haven't had hoovering, and you know what I mean, you've got all of this stuff. So it is really helpful. It's helpful that fact you can put it into a Google search or other search, and it gives you a list of things to understand what's going on. But for me, it's not exactly what you said. It's losing sight. It's taking on, it's going, oh, well, actually I was married to a narcissist and that's why I'm behaving in the way I am. Well, for me, this is about now taking on the responsibility of doing the healing and understanding why the hell did I allow that to happen to me, and how did that happen to me, and what can I do about it, and even more importantly, how can I stop that happening again?
Yes, absolutely. We have to take that radical responsibility for ourselves. I mean, I've repeated these relationships a number of times, but also not just with intimate relationships, with friendships, with all kinds of things. And I'm really starting to see that. And ultimately, I am the common denominator in those experiences. And I'm the only one that can fix and heal it. Yeah. And it's sort of interesting that you mentioned trauma bonding earlier. Jude and I were talking before we sort of started chatting about trauma bonding. And can from your point of view, could you please explain explain what trauma bonding is and how it happens, because I think it's so key to this. And then more importantly, like, what can we do to release that bonding, that trauma bonding?
Yeah, so this is, the bonds are really crucial. I mean, the information that I came across over the weekend, it was like as if somebody was had answered all the questions the way that I explain, you know, because you come out of these relationships and you don't recognize yourself. You've got emotions that are so foreign to you, you don't know where they come from. This is like there's a beast inside you trying to escape. That's how it was for me, that, you know, and I try to talk from my experience, because I think if people are experiencing what I've experienced, then they'll get an indication that, you know, it wasn't healthy. But trauma bond, we create bonds in our lifetime with our interactions with people, and they are really crucial, and they are created for protection. It involves a hormone called oxytocin. Oxytocin is present in around in the mother when she's pregnant, around about 4 or 5 months, where she starts to connect with the baby and the, you know, the baby growing inside her, and there's a release of hormones, and she's like, you know, even though she hasn't seen it and she might not have really felt it, there's a deep starting to create a deep connection. It's also involved in the birth process. So oxytocin is released as part of the softening of the cervix, and then in breastfeeding it's released so that there's that connection with the mother. So these are all, or should be, because I do appreciate that not everybody has a really strong connection with their mother. So these are, but this is where this comes from. It's a bonding. We create bonds for survival. A baby cannot survive on its own. If you went and left it on someone's, you know, in the woods somewhere, it isn't going to be there very long, you know, it's not going to be able to survive. So this bond is created, and it's done through trust. We trust the person that will look after us, and this is what happens in these relationships. So I can't remember, I was using an example of the film Scully, where the plane landed on the Hudson River back in, I can't remember whether it was sometime in the 2000s. And there's a quote from the pilot at the end of the film, and he says, "We're forever bonded together through our experience." And this is what a bond is. These people didn't know each other. He was 4C, she was 4B, he was 4A, and yet they had to trust each other. In this time of this traumatic experience, they had to form this trust that you hold my hand and I'm going to walk down here, and I trust that at the end of here there's, you know, we're going to get out, and somebody else took control. And this is these bonds, and this is what he was talking about. These forever, we are bonded by this trust. When you get in a relationship with an emotional abuser, the whole end game for them is what they do is they've got this huge fear of abandonment, and they create everything so that they're not going to be in that scenario of being abandoned, and the relationships move too quickly, and they put you in situations that push your boundaries, and they put themselves in that place of caregiver, and they put themselves in that place of trust. And then they start to, as I said, they ring fence you from people, so that if you start to talk about the relationship, they don't want people to say, "Oh, that doesn't sound too healthy," or, you know, they need to protect it and protect you, because they need you to bond. And what's happening in the cycle of abuse idealization is that, you know, throwing everything at you. This is, you know, that you're amazing, we're soulmates, you know, we're supposed to be together, and you're going, "Oh wow, I'm, you know, being seen and validated maybe on a level that nobody's ever seen me before." And then they'll criticize you, and you think, "Oh, that's a bit odd. You, like, you know, 6 months ago you thought it was one of my best qualities, and well, that's a bit odd. Why would you say that?" And it's like, "Oh, I was only joking," you know, that's you being too sensitive, and, you know, those sort of things. And then they take you round, and this happens, and this bond is created. And what you'll do in the end is you turn to this person who's actually abusing you, thinking that they're protecting you. insidious, it's awful, and it's like, it's soul destroying, it's life destroying. That is it. Hopefully that made sense.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And so how do we heal from the trauma bonds? How do we disconnect?
So I watched this video. Actually I saw 4 of them, and it's as I said, I describe this as looking in the mirror and not recognizing the person coming back. And what this psychologist was saying was that there is a stage in a child's life between 18 months and 2 years that they need to be separate from their mother and break and become a separate entity. And they're, up until that point, they only see that them and their mother is a one. They see them as one. Yeah. That separation never happens. And what they're saying is, what he was explaining it in the way that they're trying to replicate this. So this is why the cycle of abuse takes place, because they're trying to do this discard on time and time again to break it. But he said, they get in your head, and he's also a narcissist, and he talks about it from both sides, explains it, but it's about I talk about grounding, and I talk about breathing a lot, because what you tend to do is you've been programmed. And this is, to me, this is the only way I can explain it. It's like being programmed by someone who's setting up some, I don't know, a combination, and they're the only people that know how to get into that combination, and they program you to put them first over anybody else. I've also really into parasites at the moment, or for about 16 months. I've been fascinated by them, but and it does sort of fall into this. So they program you, and what you do is you're waiting and looking and questioning what you did wrong and why you're not getting the attention. What he was saying was, and as I said earlier, that it's sort of like, that's, I've been talking about this for years, taking you back to, treat yourself like a toddler, literally treat yourself like a toddler. What he was saying was, they come in and they want you to take on their mother role so that they can recreate this disconnect that should have happened between this age of 18 months and 2 years. And it doesn't work. It's never going to work, because you can't recreate it, because it should have happened at that time. But they don't know this. And on a subconscious level, they're trying to do this all the time. And he said what they actually do is they literally take you back to this toddler state. So treat yourself like a toddler. Breathe and count is amazing, because the rumination, why, what if I'd done this? Maybe I should have, oh my God, I never should have said that. That's why I'm here, and you're going over, and the pain that you're in. So breathing and counting, which is the box breathing, is just, it just helps you ground, because when you're in your body, you can see the abuse. Up here, you can't, because you were programmed not to see it as abuse.
Yes, absolutely. That's spot on. When you're in your head, you're in a reality that doesn't exist. And when you're in your body, you're in a reality that, in one level of consciousness at least, does exist. And so that you can sense it. And if you're back in touch with your body, you can feel that.
You can go and say, no, what are you doing? That you saw this, people don't treat people like this, or people don't do that. Isn't healthy the way they were behaving. Up here, you've been told that this is normal, and they might have even done things like projection or blame shifting and things like that. And I remember, I've got so many examples of this, of seeing this bad behavior, and then on separate occasions having people pointed out, look at that guy, he's with his wife and he's flirting really badly, and how he's following, and you start to think, oh my God, it's me. I've got these really high expectations, and there's something wrong with me. And that's how that's why I say it's insidious. It's so subtle, and it's happening all the time, not just in those times of where you are, in that devaluation discard, on those other levels where here's a bunch of flowers or a box of chocolates or a bottle of wine or whatever, forget about what I did. Look how
yeah, because I love you, and here
I love you.
Pay you off with this.
Here we go.
You said something really, really interesting about the narcissist, or the person that the emotional abuser that we're talking about, coming from a fear of abandonment and trying to recreate that. And what really sprung up in me at that point is, whoever we are, everybody, do your fucking abandonment work.
Yes. Yeah.
And then it doesn't matter if you're labeled the narcissist or you're labeled the victim. If you're doing your abandonment work, and all right, we can't expect anybody else to do their abandonment work. We can only do our own. And if we're doing that in the world, then we're creating a vibration that is helping, and that makes us less attracted to and susceptible to, less likely to be drawn into somebody who hasn't yet done their abandonment work and is still operating on that trauma base.
I describe it. I asked the question in my book. Again, this person said, "Oh, it's more or less answered this as well." I asked the question that if they are empty inside and they don't like themselves, okay, but they like you and they want what you have got. So what they're doing is they're taking your personality and they're taking it on as their own. Okay, so I'm saying you're looking at you, they're mirroring you, they're mirroring you, and they're saying really what you're doing in a roundabout way is falling in love with yourself, but you can't see it because you can't see that everything you liked about them was actually what they were taking, the essence that they wanted. So you've literally, in the same way that narcissists, but not in the same way, but in the way that narcissists looked in the mirror and saw his reflection and fell in love with himself, what they're actually doing is they're projecting out the elements of you. So again, that's a different way of looking at it and sort of stepping back and saying, oh my God, actually, I'm not that bad person. I'm not the person they're telling me I am. I'm actually, if I fell in love, I fell in love with myself. So why can't I actually go inside and fall in love with myself? And that is quite hard.
But healthy narcissism is at that childhood stage where the child needs a healthy mirror that reflects back the good, reflects back healthy and self-care and all of those things. And so what we're coming to, the other thing, the reason I was getting all uncomfortable while you were talking is it comes back to what you said about somebody playing out their childhood. They want to put you in the role of the mother.
Yes.
And I did some work with Byron Katie a while back. And what we worked on, and that really has just landed when you were talking, was I've been doing that with men the whole of my life. I've been putting them in the role of an abusive father and treating them as though they were, and making that happen in my life.
Yeah.
And so what comes up for me is, first of all, I have to do my work on that. And secondly, does that make me a narcissist?
No,
because I've been doing this to men unconsciously. I've been doing this to people. I've been not trusting men because I know that they just want to serve their own needs. And I know that they are, in fact, threatening to me. And some of the men, I'm sure they were. And some of the men, I would give you my left leg to say that they weren't. And they were just being a person in the world. And all I could see was a threat.
Yeah. Because that's how we live in this theta state up until we're about 7 or 8 years old. It's like a hypnotic state. So you're programmed like you are, that's why I think it's so easy for people to be programmed again. So if you see this as, people say, about this coming out of these relationships, and I said, because it actually felt comfortable for you, because you didn't, I was questions. How are you putting up with this? How can you not see this as abuse, was what somebody really close to me said. And that was one of the questions I reflected on and realized I didn't see it as abusive. I actually saw it. All I was doing was I'd recreated another relationship, and I was protecting myself, and I was using all the techniques that I'd learned on how to protect myself. I was just, and I was in that, we live, we've got this survival element within us, it's born into us, you know, the fight, fawn, freeze. And yeah, it's there to protect us, and we go into those automatically. And if as a child you were programmed, you know, in a certain way, you will use how to protect yourself. You'll see it, and then, you know, go with whatever it is that you role you take on.
And quite
go on.
And quite often, I mean, I'm sort of going to ascribe this to the feminine, but it's not exclusive to the feminine. But what I've been kind of really thinking about recently is like how I can assign other people to be my savior. And that's a deep, deep survival program, especially if you think about sort of the epigenetics of women, and how at times, you know, if a woman was not being agreeable and was not kind of pleasing, her life could literally be in danger. If you think about the witch hunts 400 years ago, if a woman was a bit different or unconventional, or was working with the natural plants of the land, and somebody took against her, you know, the accusation or the label of witch or heretic or whatever could be labeled at that, could be thrown at that person, and that would literally mean death. You know, and these are white hot survival programs that are still running through so many of us. And if we don't address this trauma and release it, then, you know, it's still going to be running us. And that's been running me for so much of my whole life.
I heard you also talking about it on another podcast about the witches. And you were sort of saying, you know, and I was thinking, yeah, but those people around them, they've gone into survival because they see what's happening to someone, and that's why they segregate one person, and it doesn't matter where you are in what environment, whether, you know, it's a relationship or a community, but they'll take one person and make them the scapegoat. And if you don't behave or do this, or this is what's going to happen to you, you're going to be outcast, or you're going to be killed, or you're going to be whatever it is. So again, some people not standing up might be seen as like weak, but actually they've probably gone into some form of protection and survival.
And it seems to me like we're all doing that. Everybody who's born is doing that. And that includes anybody who, whatever we label them, are running survival programs.
I think, is it Stanley Milgram is it Stanley Milgram? I think it is. I've done a video on him as well, on my YouTube channel, and he did an experiment. I think it's the early 60s. And I think it was after, I don't know, I can't remember whether it was after the Nuremberg trials, but he wanted to see, following the Nuremberg, maybe it was the 50s, whether it was true, whether people were just following orders.
I know this experiment.
And so he puts an advert out and gets all these people at a university applying for these roles, but he doesn't tell them it's slightly fixed. So the people that are, he's got people that are questioners, he's got people that are monitoring, or teachers, and then he's got people on the other side that are answering these questions, and the questioners have been told that these on the other side of the wall there's somebody there sat in I don't know, it's an electric chair, or they're hooked up to electricity. They've been told to go off and learn all this information. If you get a question wrong, then you press this button and it gives them a shot of electricity. And he was really shocked how many people went through with it, because they had somebody in a white coat standing behind them saying, no, you really need to do that. And there were people saying, no, I can't do it. I really can't do it. No, you need to do it. And they were like, and this person on the other side wasn't getting this, but they were going, oh my God.
And the people,
I was just following orders.
I was following orders, and he said he was really surprised, because he thought that was just an excuse. But somebody in authority, it just goes to show how programmed we are into listening to people that put on a suit, or put on an army or navy, or, you know, Air Force uniform, or doctor's white coat. You know, we see them as authoritarian, and they must know what they're doing.
And we're back to your sovereignty training, aren't we? About, well, do I trust this person to know the best for me and to want the best for me above my own ability and knowledge. Of course, there's a balance. You've got to be able to say, well, that person may have spent many years studying medicine. They've studied what is currently being taught in medicine. That's another another podcast. But that, you know, do I trust this person to know better for me than...
It does. I mean, those there are, and I suppose it's what you're open to, because I had a situation with my daughter, and she had a really bad reaction to some antibiotics. I mean, literally within seconds of taking them, and her body must have been telling her, because she said to me, I don't know, she put, and I'm not, no lie, it was about a good 3/4 of a metre long, the leaflet that came with the antibiotics. And she said, oh, I don't know, look at all of this. And I said, the doctor wouldn't do that to you. They would not give you something that was going to hurt you. And she went downstairs. I was working, I was on the phone, and she went downstairs, and she came up, and she went, it was like 3 or 4 minutes, and her eyes were out. And I was mouthing to her, phone the doctor now. And I just got off the phone. I drove her and they were like stabbing her with stuff, saying, and we got to A&E, and they said, why have they given you this drug? Why have they given you this for tonsillitis? So
wow.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's questioning. I question everything now.
I question everything as well. I question everything. I think it's always good to do our due diligence, because if something then does turn out to be harmful for us, whether it's an antibiotic or whether it's a person or a system, whatever, if we do our due diligence and we step up and we ask those difficult questions and push through any fears that we might have about doing that, of whether we're going to be rejected, abandoned, punished, or criticized for doing that, then we are coming from our own place of truth, and we have to take responsibility for whatever happens as a consequence of that decision. But at least we're taking it from our own sense of self rather than from an external authority. Yeah. So I think we might be coming towards the end of our session. We've been having a good old conversation here. What's next for you, Elizabeth? What's coming next?
I don't know. Just continuing what I'm doing. I am considering actually opening a support group for men, because I do get a lot. And in fact, the first year of the lockdown, I had more men make contact and say, you know, I'm in this relationship. So I have shied away at the moment, but that's one thing that I'm working with, and seeing a lot more men having the courage to speak up. It's hard to help someone who isn't, you know, hasn't got the courage to be helped, but, you know, to say anything. I think that's it. I mean, I'm growing my Facebook community, and running more courses. My whole thing is about helping people get to the deep wound where this all comes from, and relieving them. And I can do that very quickly, but it's about giving up. Caroline Myss calls it leading with the wound. It's about giving up the crutch of that label. Again, it's another reason I'm not that keen on labeling things. It's, you know, at some point you have to take responsibility and start to walk on your own. So that's it's just running more courses and trying to make, you know, people aware. I've still got the other book, it's still on my laptop. I've sort of stepped away from it at the moment, because I feel it isn't quite complete and I don't know what's missing, so I've sort of step back. But it's 3 things you should never do divorcing a narcissist. So I want to make it light-hearted, but you know, also deep as well, but not writing off the abuse that happens and the trauma and pain that you go through. So it's getting it at the right balance.
Excellent. Wow, I look forward to reading that when it is ready. And in the meanwhile, we will put links to various places where people can connect with you and find you in underneath the podcast, so people can come and find you and connect with you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's been an absolute delight. So
excellent. Well, thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode. And thanks again, Elizabeth, for joining us.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Bye.
Over the hill I see the fire burning, as in my dream, now real as we are turning. So what of love, the moon and stars are asking, while as the fire burns bright, the night is passing.